a hot summer everywhere in the world, but we're here to cool you off with the Gooners Pod weekly kickoff show.
Once upon a time, way back when there were only 9,000 Arsenal podcasts, 5 young men from various backgrounds, an Irish kid with a horrible haircut, a young Jewish nerd who hadn't discovered food yet, a child from Hemel Hempstead who didn't want to be English no more, a handsome advertising magnate with impeccable judgment, and a young Mexican AC Milan fan hatched a plan to take over the world of Arsenal podcasts. But then these boys became men. Jared, Mikey, Ewan, Magic, and Andy. And the rest, my friends, is history. And now, all these years later, you tune in every so often to hear their incredible takes, their football knowledge, and their sensual advice. But now, it's gone too far. You, our fans, are at long last witness to season
7.
Welcome to the Gooners Pod.
Welcome to the Gooners Pod, episode 7.05. I'm waiting for the cease and desist letters to come from Courtney Cox and Boyz II Men. I don't know who should be more angry at us right now. I'd say probably Boyz II Men, because if they're trying to make a comeback in the world and then this is weighing heavily over them, I would be pretty upset. But it's Monday. It seems like just 3 days ago that we were doing the week in review, and now it's our weekly kickoff show. It's funny how that happens, Jared. How you been?
Yeah, doing pretty good. Not much time's passed. I've changed locations, working out of the hotel room, but glad
Are
to
you
be
on the
back
run?
with
Are you on the lam, as they call it?
The subway stuff never stops. Got to keep it moving.
I mean, he's escaped from Max. I think Jared is the actual Jared, not the poser that we have on this channel. I think he is actually in like I think he's in Leavenworth or some shit like that, like in the maximum security prison.
I mean, he should be. I hope he is.
Probably for his own protection, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
that's what they do, right?
Those types of guys in prisons, but
They
yeah,
have
you've changed your face, you've changed your whole look, you've and you're on the lam clearly. Now, it seems that the sun is setting through the window, which would be to the west. So your right is to the west. That means you're facing south. I think I've just figured out where you are.
Rain Man over here.
Yeah. So
and he's visiting Jared is what he's doing.
My head may not look like it, but my head is a compass, and I know exactly where you are now. I've triangulated, I've divined, I've found you. Mikey, you look like you're just in the middle of a void. What is your kid napping or something like that? Is that why you're in there?
Yeah, so these podcasts coincidentally go right on hand with my 9-month-old nap schedule. So he naps in the bedroom where I actually have my podcasting setup. So I'm actually, for the second week in a row, I'm podcasting on the floor in my daughter's room. So I just kicked the daughter out, and I just got nothing but wall here. I'm on the floor literally because my chair is my laptop stand. Very professional.
You got to retrain him, because I mean, I took my nap and woke up about half an hour ago, fully refreshed and ready to go. So,
I believe you take naps for sure.
I 100% took a nap. I nap when I want.
No, it's too young of a family. I ain't got that luxury.
Lots going on in the Arsenal world.
We seem to have kicked off the transfer mill here. So, I mean, it's something that neither of us like to deep dive tremendously, but it's almost unavoidable at this point. There's so much rumors and transfer business actually going on that, well, I mean, frankly, it's the only news going on. So we're going to kick it off. And, our good friend Daniel Robert actually pinpointed our first topic today before going into transfers. Eddie Nketiah. So the disgraceful club has let us down once again by providing Eddie Nketiah the number 14. And,
I'm done, man. I'm done with this club.
I'm done. My club, okay? It's enough. my club. We can't do this. So now we're gonna talk about Eddie Nketiah's contract renovation. But first, Jared, I'm going to go to you and just overall. I mean, were you surprised at all with this backlash? Were you surprised at the fact that they gave him the number 14? I know it kind of caught a few people off guard. I wasn't expecting it, but I wasn't expecting what came after.
I mean, I'm not surprised by the backlash. Anything that Arsenal does is going to draw scrutiny from, the Twitterverse. As far as him taking that number, it's not American sports where we retire numbers. I'd much rather see a guy like Nketiah wearing 14 than, him wearing number 43 because we've retired all these numbers over the years. And similarly, no one really cared when Smith Rowe took the number 10, and he's a guy who's not necessarily a locked-in starter, oftentimes comes off the bench. He's going to be playing a similar role to Nketiah. And no one really cared when he took 10. It wasn't an insult to Bergkamp. It wasn't a disgrace by the club. But I think a lot of people who didn't want Nketiah to stay to start with just kind of used that as fuel to the fire to criticize him a little bit further.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, realistically. It was, with that being said, right, Jared, what you said with the whole Smith Rowe got to 10, Saka got to 7, you would almost we were already tiptoeing in that trend, right? Like if that was going to happen, if Eddie Nketiah was going to stay, 14 was kind of going to be his thing because that's what the club is kind of going for as far as keeping the tradition alive and, these boyhood players that we have. And I think that's underestimated a little bit with like Eddie Nketiah doesn't seem to get the hail end love / tag that, Smith, Rowe, and Saka do because he's been here at the club since a very, very early age. I saw a picture of him with the Invincible kit, and he was just a scrub. I'm surprised that love kind of goes over him.
What's a little different about him than the other two is that he does have a Chelsea pedigree. He came to us at age 14 about 9 years ago. I think he may have been a Gooner, which is where that picture came from. But, Chelsea essentially gave up on him at an age of 14. He came to our academy and started banging in goals in the U18s. I first found out about him because of Danny the GFP doing his academy
loan watch. Yeah.
It was constantly just Eddie Nketiah, 2 goals, Eddie Nketiah, 5 goals, Eddie Nketiah. It was ridiculous. Like the guy was scoring goals back like Super Kev used to do when he was in the academy. Which was insane. I don't know that record's been beaten. So if there's a difference between Saka and Smith Rowe getting 7 and 10 and Nketiah getting 14, it's just the pure feeling amongst most of the fan base that Eddie's not in the class of those two players. And frankly, he hasn't played his way into that class yet. And we a lot of doubt as to whether he can or not.
Yeah, he certainly hasn't reached that level yet, but his opportunities haven't been the same as those guys, and maybe rightfully so, just because of Saka is just a different breed. You're not going to get many guys from the academy that at his age are starting for their country, playing a significant role in all of that. But the fact is, when it comes to Nketiah, if the team's willing to say, hey, we want to re-sign you, put you on $100K a week, which I'm sure we're going to talk about here, and give you a 5-year contract extension, you're saying you're an important player to us to some degree. So it's hard to turn around and tell the guy he can't have the number he wants. Additionally, there probably wasn't an option for the number 9 only because there's another striker out there that might be on his way in that's going to want that number. So, there's no 10, there's no 11. These are all taken. So it's a limited number in that lower end that he would want. So, if he wants it, take it. But he has been at Arsenal for 9 years, like you said. He understands the importance of the number 14 and the significance. So he doesn't just blindly take that, not knowing that that's kind of a lot to live up to. And, you can say maybe he will, maybe he won't, but kudos to him for sort of putting that responsibility and pressure on himself to go out there and perform a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think, you want somebody that's going to take the ball and run with it and take his shot and is not going to, he's not going to, what is it from Hamilton? He's not going to throw away his shot. And number 14 was available. It wouldn't have been available if he re-signed last year or the year before. None of the other real striking numbers are available. I mean, who wears number 8 for us right now? I mean, is it Odegaard?
Odegaard.
I mean, yeah. Odegaard's a good, but Ian Wright, man, did a lot of credit to the number 8 for Arsenal. No different than I mean, when you talk about a number that's really only known for one person, even if that one person is Thierry Henry, it's not like, and I've said this a few times over the last week or so, it's not like the 7 at Manchester United or the England, captaincy, or these are not legendary, you go back 9 or 10 players strong. The 7 at Arsenal is probably the closest thing to that, with Liam Brady, David Rocastle, and tons of other people wearing that 7 that are club legends. I mean, it really just is. There's only been numbers and names attached to each other for the last 28 years or so. And Thierry Henry, best all-time Arsenal player, or co-best time Arsenal player with Bergkamp. But that's it, because I wouldn't consider Aubameyang a club legend, or anyone who left the club in any kind of good stead. I wouldn't consider Theo Walcott a club legend. He's a 100-goal scorer, but took him 71 years to do it. So, I just don't think this is a big deal. It's just another bat to hit whoever you want to hit with, whether it's the club or the decision makers in the management, or Nketiah himself. And we don't know that he wasn't just handed the 14 jersey, like, here you go, kid, do us proud.
True.
So, it's just the abuse. And I love Ian Wright and Gabrielle getting involved on social media and just, batting down some of the assholes out there. I mean, you have to really be a special kind of person if, in addition to being like a little maybe disappointed internally or whimsical about, I remember who used to wear the 14 and now it's Eddie and Kit. If you're going to think that, fine. But if you got to take to social media and just abuse the guy over it, suckle me.
And I think there's a difference between thinking, okay, number 14 carries a lot of weight, and that weight might weigh him down with the expectations that it brings. That's a normal thought, like you said, right? It's the ideology of actually contacting the player and bashing for him. So, I mean, regarding Smith Rowe, Saka, and now Eddie Nketiah, I think it says a lot about our youngsters, because a lot of players don't want that smoke, if you think about it. And the fact that, I think Arteta said himself that Smith Rowe will run to the 10, Saka 1 to the 7. So, look, you kind of need your strikers to be cocky or, self-believing. So the fact that he says, I'll take the 14, I think it speaks well on his behalf. And I mean, let's be honest. I mean, he hasn't given his opportunity yet. I do believe that there's a counter side, just to keep this a little balanced, of people out there saying I saw like ideology floating around, like there's no reason to sign another striker. We have Eddie. Okay, he's not quite there yet, and I don't think that's horrible to say, but all right.
Point me to whoever's saying that, and I'll have a word. I mean, that's
I will tag you. And Brennan commented
names and addresses, and I will.
I have a special set of whatever is the line of that one movie. I'm forgetting the line.
I have a certain specific set of skills.
There you go. This made me crack up. We gave William Gallas the number 10, and I think Gallas got the number 10 almost like immediately after Bergkamp.
It was within a year or two. But yeah, I don't think there was anyone in between them.
I mean, if you want to talk about heavy, man, I mean, that's it. It's so heavy and so deep rooted that when we discussed the number 10 and Smith Rowe received it, Gallas didn't even get brought up. There was no one in between. Everybody was like, "Oh, hold on, but that Bergkamp's the number. So how dare you?" So, anyways,
I didn't get to hear this today because I was sleeping in the middle of the afternoon. But Darren says Super Kev made a great point. The club are trying to connect Hale End with past legends, and you know what? I think that could be intentional. There are videos to be made of 7, 10, and 14, old and new, and I happen to know that the old 7, 10, and 14 are around. At least the 7 that some of the 7s that we think about. Unfortunately, Rocastle isn't, but. So I think that's and I think that's nice and symbolic. And frankly, if you think that Nketiah isn't good enough and is going to fail horribly in his position, then if Osimhen and Tammy Abraham and every other big striker that we want, they can get the 14 next season. It's just a 1-year thing if that's really what you think. So
it's problem solved right there. Danny with the kind words. He said, Mike Hernandez looks quite sexy with the glasses. Does he do sexy ASMR? I don't know what that is. And
I had a feeling you were going to know what that is.
Yeah,
it's
I
going to
don't
be
know.
available on
I
the
didn't
TGP
think that
OnlyFans
was-
page.
Okay,
So keep your eye out for that.
That's even more. That's even
it
more
ass
scary
to
to think
mouth?
about that. Yeah. Oh shit.
Mm.
Okay, moving on forward. Not moving past Eddie and Nketiah, but the rumored wages, right? And I say rumor because there's always bonuses and things involved, and it's very difficult to pinpoint exactly how much people make. I remember, I can't even remember how many years ago it was, but when we first signed Willian, I remember they reported his wages, and it was like there wasn't enough anger online. Nobody cared. So what they did was they
$1 million a week.
yes, they also included like the bonus in it just to like bump up the wage and be like some. So if we're being honest, look, the rumor is 100K, and we're gonna continue the conversation based on 100K. But Jared, is 100K reasonable for a young Premier League striker that is young, but ultimately may very well end up being a backup for the Arsenal?
Yeah, so I kind of talked about this at length the other day with Mike and Dan Potts, but I'll kind of go over what I said then. I think on its surface, when someone says, is he a 100-pound per week player, a lot of people would say not yet, or he hasn't proven it yet. But the reality is you have to look at it from the club's point of view when they give that deal out. 100K a week is 5.2 a year, so 26 million over 5 years. To find anyone of Nketiah's level, if you didn't give him that deal to come in, is going to cost you 26 million or more in a transfer fee. You look at guys who would be in that same sort of class, maybe Edson Odegaard from Crystal Palace, maybe Patson Daka, who went to Leicester. Both of these guys had transfer fees that were in that region or higher. And I think in terms of accomplishments and level, they're probably pretty similar. So you're going to have to pay as much up front to one of those players before you even get to the wages for as much as it'll cost you to keep Eddie for 5 years. Additionally to that, this gives us flexibility with Eddie. Before this deal, he was worth essentially nothing to Arsenal at that point with his contract running out. Now, if he comes out this year and, say across all competitions gets 12 to 15 goals, which I think is definitely possible, you could turn around next year if you wanted to then bring in your other premier striker to pair. You could turn around and sell him for probably 25 million, which is, all profit. He's a youth academy player. So while the initial reaction of people when they hear 100K a week for Eddie Nketiah, they don't think he's worth it yet. But when you kind of think about it in terms of the finances a little bit deeper and what it means for the club moving forward, I think the deal makes perfect sense.
Well put, man. And even right down to your comparables with Edson Odegaard and Patson Daka. Both of those guys probably you could argue might have a bigger upside than Nketiah, but I don't think that you could separate those three as far as current contributions. Everyone was going crazy about Odegaard last summer. What did he end up this season with? 5 or 6 goals?
Probably similar to what Eddie got, and Eddie didn't really play until the
lot
latter half
more
of the
time
season.
on the pitch too.
Yeah.
100,000 a week is paying. We talk about paying for potential like it's a bad thing, but then we also get really angry when we pay for past performance. Which are you supposed to pay for? You're supposed to make an investment in potential. If Daniel Roberts said, if he becomes a proper Premier League goal scorer in the 10 to 18 goal in all competition level, not your the class of a Mo Salah, not in the class of a top Aubameyang or Van Persie, but if he does that, 100,000 a week is going to be nothing for a club to take on who wants a number one striker in a club like Palace, might come back in for him again. A newly promoted club next season, like if Luton Town comes through or Sheffield United comes up, that's going to be. That's going to be the profile of their number one striker because they're not signing Victor Osimhen. So, 100,000 a week is excessive for what he's accomplished. When you consider Saka's on 30 right now and Smith Rowe's on chump change, obviously those guys are going to have to be making a lot more when with their next contracts. But I don't think it's excessive. We were all begging Theo Walcott to sign the thing for 140,000 a week, like 7 or 8 years ago, prior to some of the most recent TV money inflation on wages and transfer contracts. So, when you think about all the angles, and specifically the ones that Jared just brought up from his bunker, I think it's pretty reasonable. And I think you probably, if you'd offered him 80, I think he probably wouldn't have felt valued enough to stay. And while some people would have been happy with that, it's fine for me. I'm going to wait and see how he plays. If he is awful, if he's given chances, stays healthy, and sucks this season, then he becomes a bit of an albatross in that if we do want to give up on him, we're selling him at his absolute low, and his wages might make it too high to move. And we've been in that situation before, but I don't think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, and even so, we're going to pay him $5.2 million gross over the next year. Even if he doesn't play well, we could sell him for $6 million next summer. So we're not really out anything.
To someone who would want to be able
wages.
to take that 100.
Yeah.
My only concern is if the 100,000 starts to become like, oh well, we're not paying his wages at 100,000. We don't want that. Then
we don't want to subsidize it again, like we've seen.
It's 100,000. It's not 200. It's 100.
Yeah,
everyone makes a hundo these days. Mike makes a hundo.
Yeah, a hundo. Yeah, literally single $100 bills.
just a hundo.
Yeah. I like how hundo sounds of it. And look, in the contract, in the league in itself, 100K isn't like something absurd. So if we're looking at other teams that might potentially be into him, like teams like Everton and Crystal Palace and all those are teams that can cover those wages. And if the trend continues to be the way it is, the disparity between English Premier League and the rest of the Europe, it's the massive gap there. So I don't think 100K is one of those that will like, oh no, we just cannot afford you. They might be able to subsidize, like you said, and bring in a transfer fee slightly a little bit smaller, but it's not 250. It's not we have to pay you to leave. It's not nothing like that. So I think we're in a good position.
100K for a guy like Kolasinac.
Exactly. And he was on more, right? He was like on 140, I think. It was the rumor at one point in time. Yeah. So
Zaha's at 130. I mean, I'm just looking at kind of these, maybe Zaha's the number one guy there, but Benteke is on 120. So they're paying two kind of soon to be over the hill strikers a total of 250.
Look at that. Hudson-Odoi, 180. My head hurts now. That's amazing.
Well,
that's big.
Chelsea's in a different game as far as what they're paying in wages. Chelsea and United are just buried in wage bill, I'm sure.
I think both of those teams are going to come down to reality pretty quick here.
Oh, I think they are right now. United's was terrible last year, and I think Chelsea's certainly not trending in a good direction, at least right now. They just paid a $100 million loan fee for Lukaku and didn't have a great end of the season. So
I can't tell you how much I was rooting for West Ham to win that game so that United could finish in the Conference League. That would have been just prime banter era right there. Mikey, are you frozen or are you just fixated and very fixed on your screen?
Yeah, I'm looking through all the teams to see how many, 100,000 pound a week players of his type that there are. And I'm surprised by how many teams don't have a 100,000 pound a week player. I mean, they're the teams you'd think, Leeds, Fulham coming up, but
of the world.
Yeah. The Fulhams of the world where what's his name, who scores 97 million goals a season. Well, his salary's not listed. So yeah, I mean, I don't think by next summer, if we have to, he's going to be unsellable, but we'll see. This is kind of the way it works. When you pay for potential, you might overpay, but you might really, really underpay. That's
a good point. Yeah.
But if he plays well and we can turn around and sell him for $25 million next summer, he's done a good service for us and subsidized, a transfer fee for a second, hopefully, Premier level striker that we've all wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Nicely put, gentlemen. Appreciate that. Now, before we get into the transfer ordeal, I have to bring this up. Our goalkeeper, Turner, that is coming in. There was a video circulating online where he was signing off his kits and his last MLS game, and he's going down Arsenal fan or American fan, just his kit, and he's autograph. And then he gets to a gentleman that's wearing I use that term loosely, that is wearing a Spurs kit. And he looks up, he goes, no, and he keeps on walking. Now, listen, I know it's not the end-all, be-all, the rivalry, but, I mean, Jared, that's quality right there, right? That's the type of shit that we want to see.
I mean, if you're an Arsenal fan, you've got to love that he hasn't even put a shirt on for us yet, played a single minute, and he's already, he gets it. He understands what the rivalry is and is willing to tell that dirtbag to beat it. And I love that he already had his hands on the shirt to sign it when he glanced up and saw the shirt, and he was like, oh, no, and just throws the thing aside. So it's a funny thing that, we're all going to grab onto. If people listening haven't seen the video, I think I retweeted it, but it's funny. It's stuff that we like. So I thought it was good banter for a guy who's just now coming in.
It's beautiful. And what they didn't show in that video is that after the camera went off, he punched him in the face and then urinated on him.
I knew it was going to be something bad.
The punching in the face, that's pretty typical, but there was no need for him to urinate on him. I mean, that was just that they go in that extra mile. But you know what? As a Gooner, I love it. I mean, it's exactly what you want to see, or what Owen likes to see. We found out privately.
I would say the Gooners podcast does not condone peeing, but I mean, if we're being honest, the Gooners podcast.
Well, you have to at some point. You might as well do it on a spur. On a Tottenham fan.
All right, you'll have
to waste water flushing that way. But anyway, yeah, no, that endeared him. It's almost. Would you, if you were like getting ready to make this move and you knew that people were kind of wary of Americans coming over to play and had no idea who you were, would you set that situation up? Like, do you think that might have been a plant to where like that, like the Tottenham guy was like, okay, I'll give you $30 to wear that shirt and come over, and I'm gonna, because the Tottenham guy pulled his shirt back pretty quickly, like he didn't seem disgusted or offended by it. He was just like, oh man, okay, whatever. And that part kind of is a little fishy for me. So I'm not calling Turnergate here. I'm not calling Spur Shirtgate. I'm not trying to create something out of nothing, because I never do that. No, but I don't know. It was smooth. It worked for me.
All right, you'll have to see it. Before we get on to some of the transfers that potentially coming in, something that occurred to me is this: Fulham is in talks apparently with Leno, Jared, and I have a question, and I don't want to be too big-headed about this regarding Arsenal, and I do know that they already signed Turner, but if you're a goalkeeper that plays for the Arsenal, unless they flat out told you, please leave, wouldn't playing like Cup, FA Cup, Europa League, League Cup at the Arsenal, wouldn't that still be considered better for your career than potentially going to a Fulham that's going to come up and potentially yo-yo back into the second division? Am I too uppity about ourselves right now, or I just just measuring out expectations and what I mean? Ultimately, it seems like he wants to stay in London. If Fulham is really his destination.
Yeah, I mean, second choice at Arsenal versus first choice at Fulham. I think Arsenal's the better team, obviously the better organization to be with, but he's just had an entire year of not playing much football. I don't think he wants another year. He's still kind of in his prime age, so I don't think he wants to spend 2 years in a row really not seeing much of the pitch. Also, and I'm not sure it would be as big of a impact for him. It's a World Cup year. He probably wants to be on the pitch as much as possible, trying to get minutes. It's questionable whether he's going to make the German squad. He's certainly not going to start or have any chance of that, but he's going to want to represent his team. And I think being seen out there playing 90 minutes every week, week in, week out in the Premier League is going to give him a better chance to do that than, featuring in a Carabao Cup game for Arsenal, probably.
I mean, you nailed it right there. I mean, the first two spots on the German national team are solidified already. Ter Stegen being the likely number 2, but being the number 3 keeper on a team that theoretically has an opportunity, though you might not agree, to win the World Cup or to get on the podium somewhere is meaningful. And I think after a year, if you're a competitor, nothing tells me that Leno's one of these guys that wants to sit on the bench. I think he's done it. I think he's actually been way more professional about it than I had anticipated that it would go. In the sense that when he was called on, he was magnificent and the team clearly loved him. But, one season you can kind of live with that. When it gets to be 2 and possibly even beyond, you kind of want to get a fresh start. And there aren't a whole lot of teams in London that are looking for keepers. Fulham's going to get peppered. They're going to give up a ton of goals next season. And it's going to be hard for him. But I would imagine the writing's on the wall for him. They wouldn't have brought in Turner if they were comfortable with him being number 2, because they've got 2 potential number 3s in Hine and Okonkwo. So I just think maybe he could do better than Fulham, Mark, but we don't know who's calling him. I really would have expected him to go someplace in Germany this summer. I would have thought, I don't know what the goalkeeping situations are at your Mönchengladbachs of the world and your Freiburgs, and you got your Hoffenheims and your Herthas, but like I just would have assumed somebody would want the person who by all accounts is probably the 3rd best German goalie in the world right now.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is there's a big appeal to London. I think that's one of the things that works in our favor in the transfer market, and probably works in Fulham's case here. If he's comfortable there and likes the city, he may have a desire to stay. And if that's the case, your options are pretty limited. But what I would add, and you mentioned it,
Orient.
Yeah, you mentioned his professionalism throughout. When you look at his situation, where he was the clear-cut number 1, and then he gets taken over by a very young keeper from a relegation side, there's a lot of things he could have done to make the situation worse, made it a public problem, as players tend to do nowadays. And there was none of that. He was a pro's pro throughout the season. And I think he deserves kudos for that. I mean, because we're very quick to criticize people who don't do that. I think it's worth recognizing someone who, handles themselves in that way. And also, if you're Arsenal, I think you need to take that into consideration. And, when he's trying to make a move, we need to do, within reason, what we can to kind of cater to his wants, because he's done a job for us and done it well over the last year.
And because I go to London a lot more than I go to Germany, with him having just married Sophie, not Sophie from the Highbury squad, obviously, but Sophie Kristen, now Sophie Leno, that situation of the two of they're the best looking married couple I've ever seen in my life, and they need to be in London for when I get there, because I know that a threesome will ensue. So Fulham would be fine. My travel card goes down to Fulham. So
there you go.
Yeah, just call me. I absolutely love that, Mark. With the brilliant comment right here, he says he wishes Leno went to Aston Villa so he could demote Martinez to the bench. I would die, dude. I would die.
That's brilliant.
Hey, just quick.
Mark's on fire again. I'm waiting for the one bad comment, because he sprinkles in one bad one with 9 really good ones. So
I'll keep an eye open for that one.
It's coming.
Just a quick yes or no question. I'm going to ask you two gentlemen, because for those of you that don't know, my last kit that has a name of an Arsenal player are Fabregas, and Fabregas. So I don't. Ever since then, he was my last heartbreak as far as a player.
I threw all of mine of his away.
And I know Mikey. I mean, you should have given them to me. I know Mikey had his famous Kolasinac one, and after he bought that, Kolasinac took the shit. But we're gonna move.
He has a Willian also.
Oh
no,
yeah.
I didn't. I didn't own a Willian. I bought a Willian for somebody on a something that I committed to try to get him firing. Like we were in a bad. We were in a bad way, and I said, if Willian scores or assists a goal and we win, then I'll buy someone who retweets this a Willian shirt. And wouldn't you know, we got 2 assists that day and we won. So
man was on fire.
I hold on to my, my middle name, as I've said before, is integrity, and so it's all about integrity.
I'm going to ask Jared and Mike just simple yes or no questions so we can move past this and on and forward, guys. But Eddie Nketiah, would you wear the Eddie Nketiah number 14 kit out in public? Like, would you rock it? Say it, you purchased it yourself or it was given to you? No problem?
I mean, in honesty, I don't own a single shirt with the player name on the back. I never get them, but yeah, I'd wear it. If somebody else bought it, I'd wear it. It's an Arsenal shirt.
Jared and I subscribe to the theory of these hoes ain't loyal, so we purchase kits.
That's exactly it. Yeah,
and I don't either. I made a promise 4 years ago that I wouldn't, and then I broke that promise once for Saka and once for Tierney. So I guess maybe it's not a great promise, but I have no plans on putting a name on the back of either of my new jerseys. But again, if I won an Eddie Nketiah jersey in Gooners versus Cancer raffle this summer, I would wear it. I'd sport it, and then when he scores, and again, I would wear it for Europa League games and EFL Cup games only. But then, you know, I could be the guy who had the faith and was proven correct. So, yeah.
Love that. Daniel Roberts said he might use the Vieira one. Actually, I thought about Vieira because I just wanted a kit with Vieira on the back of it. I'm like, that's going to be good.
Ben White's got to play ball, man. I know that. I know you love your number 4, Ben White, but you got to give it up, man.
I'm pretty. No, I don't think.
No one's going to mistake this Vieira for the other one.
Yeah. Commentary won't have an
play style, like the way they play.
So BX with a brilliant segue going into our next point of conversation. So this Rafinha rumors are not going away. So I'll be honest. The first time I heard this story, I 100% dismissed it. I'm like, no, there's no way. No way. We're looking for a winger of that quality to come in and, you know, play for us either on the bench or potentially challenge tackle for the starting 11. So I was quite amazed because, quite frankly, when we qualified for Europa League and not Champions League, for me, that meant Nelson was going to stick around and was going to be our European winger. So the fact that we're linked with Rafinha, Jared, look, I don't know much about his personality. I stopped watching Leeds a little bit after they let Bielsa go because I'm a big local Bielsa fan. But if he does come in, I mean, what kind of role do you think could be accepting or working for him? Is he somebody that's going to come in and try to challenge and dethrone Martinelli on the left and Saka on the right? Or do you think he might have that super sub type of role in our squad?
Well, as a Jesse Marsh fan, I do watch Leeds United, so I can tell you I'm a big fan of his, and he's certainly not coming in to be a substitute. He's a top quality player, and I think that's reflected when you look at all the teams he's been mentioned with. Obviously, Barca is the primary. It's just a financial issue with them. You look at us, mentioned with Spurs, potentially, I think kind of lightly got mentioned around Chelsea, but all the teams he's been mentioned with other than Arsenal are all Champions League teams, and he's a Champions League level player. And if we want to get there, that's the type of guy we need to bring in. As far as where he'll play in our team, I see him and Saka starting, you know, on the wings. Who's right, who's left. You know, I could see that going either way. Both obviously primarily play on the right. I think Saka's pretty versatile and can play left. But on the other side of that, Arteta seems to like, you know, a left footer on the right side, a right footer on the left side, so they can cut inside on their dominant foot and allow for an overlapping fullback. But there's versatility there. And he's a guy that will be, you know, when you're going for a guy from Leeds, you're going to get a guy who's willing to run miles every game. And he plays with an intensity, not just the intensity in runs going forward, but also on the defensive side, the blocks, the pressures, the clearances. I mean, he does everything you would want. Basically everything that we wanted Nicolas Pepe to do down the right side, he does that when we don't have the ball. And he does it pretty relentlessly, and he gives us a ton of flexibility in terms of positioning. So I was with you. I was surprised to hear that link. I wasn't surprised we'd be interested. I was a little surprised it may come to fruition just because it sounded like he was set for Barca, kind of no matter what this summer. But if we bring him in, it will be a coup. And the other thing that I'll add that he has that I've wanted in our front line is a player that plays with a little bit of ferocity, has a bit of an edge to him. Because as good as our front players are, we don't really have anybody that gets in people's faces and sort of mixes it up. And he has that in spades. He's a little bit of a wild card at times. But I like that. There's room for one or two guys like that in a team, and I think we need one. So I'm all for the Rafinha signing if that goes through.
I know nothing about the guy really, other than he was pretty good against us. I mean, this is a guy that's just it's happened so quickly, and that I kind of not invested myself too much in it because I just wrote it off a lot like Jared today. I mean, Jared's taken all my good points. He's 25. And he's 25 until he's 26, which isn't for another 6 months, because that's how it works. But the age profile works. You know, we got our 19 and 20 and 21 year olds. We got another really promising 22-year-old. So, you know, sprinkle in a couple 25s, couple 26s, and you got a player with a profile that's been there and done it before. Where did this guy come from? That he went to Leeds and broke out like that. I mean, I could see he came from. Was
he at Rennes?
Yeah, I'd have to look. He came from Rennes and Sporting before that, but I meant more like when did he rise to such prominence? Was it at Leeds?
Yeah, he's one that I didn't follow him back then, but he feels like a guy who's come into his kind of come into himself at Leeds, which is weird in the Premier League. Normally, it's a more difficult league to sort of impose your game, and he's come in and done it well.
Of course, you would know what he feels like. I should expect that out of you. So,
the other thing I would add on him, Leeds, their style of play is a little bit all over the map, so it's tough to get a handle on what he's going to produce. I will say within the last year or so, since he's become part of the Brazilian national team, I watched a few of their games just because there's some Arsenal guys on the squad, and he's looked fantastic for them. I think there's been a couple of games that if you had never seen a game of football before and just turned on the TV, he would be the guy that stood out as the best player on the pitch at times. And in a pretty talented Brazilian team, that's saying quite a lot. So that gives me confidence that we maybe would get more out of him at Arsenal than they do at Leeds, just because we're going to have a lot more of the ball when he's here.
Now, then the conversation turns to, obviously we've got closer to 50 to 60 games this year instead of 38. But I do not subscribe to we already have a right winger. So why do we need him theory? Because, we also had a left back. We had a destroyer number 6. We had all these guys, and none of them were anywhere around the pitch when we needed to beat Newcastle on the second to last game of the season. So stock up, man. I mean, that's if you want to seriously compete, you have to have 2 players who you would be very happy to go to war with for a North London derby or a game against Chelsea or City every single game. Not just, I think we can get by with this guy because we're playing West Brom in the League Cup. And, there's nothing wrong with Saka and Rafinha being on the same team. There's nothing wrong, in my opinion, with Partey and I guess Vieira is not exactly they're not even in the same position. Nothing wrong with having Odegaard and ESR and Vieira all in the same team. We're going to need that. We want people pushing each other for starting positions. And if you can get players to accept playing half the minutes, like they do when they're at City, or like they do when they're, on teams where you're really, really good, but Jack Grealish can't force himself into the starting 11 because of Phil Foden and because of Riyad Mahrez and all these guys. Good, man. I mean, that's how you win stuff.
It is, and the way you say City does that really well, Liverpool does that well. There's a common theme here. Winning kind of solves everything. Guys don't mind playing a few less minutes if they're on a winning side that's contending for stuff. So,
it's extending their careers as well. I mean, this is a World Cup year. I mean, the demands on these players this season in particular is beyond anything that is reasonable. I would bet Dr. Raji Brar on Twitter would be very, I'm sure he's sounding the alarms on this. Players are going to have these stress injuries, these muscular injuries. It's going to be, there's going to be a lot of missed games for a lot of players this year. And you really do serve yourself better by having strong second string players, if you want to use that expression, or a 1 and a 1A like Saka and Rafinha. Saka was fantastic last year, but should have played about 30% less minutes than he did. And we just, he didn't. And while we had someone that could have stepped in Pepe, wasn't trusted. And we need 2 guys that are. So if Rafinha is the kind of competitor that Alexis Sanchez is, by the way, and I saw BX Gunner say that in the chat, second coming of Sanchez, we really need to figure out what to do with Bellerin, because we can't have Rafinha and Bellerin on the pitch at the same time, or Bellerin will start whining that he's trying too hard.
So it was something that you mentioned, Mike, is the amount of games that are going to happen. So, we got the league. I think there's going to be 16 fixtures prior to the World Cup. We're going to play all 6 of the Europa League games before the World Cup. So there's going to be an absolute overload where we're going to play like 20 games. Two
League Cup games. So like 24 games in 23 weeks or something like that.
So that said, look, so I use this comment in our notes, but in NBA, we got something referred to as load management. And that's pretty much coaches just being used to just laying players off. Just like, oh no, he has a nagging injury, et cetera, just some BS thing that they have to come up with to put them on the injury list. But in reality, it's heavy rotation and planned rotation. Jared, looking forward to this this next season is health key. I mean, taking into consideration, sorry, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Mikey, one thing that I think that severely cost us top four is not only that our starting 11 couldn't be healthy, but our depth suck. I mean, that's being, look, El Neni came in, did a great job for the last couple of games, but the last couple of games, El Neni is not, Partey's quality. Tavares is not Tierney quality. So if we're bringing in players like Rafinha, Gabriel Jesus, and we're keeping, Nketiah, that's hiring our floor. So it's bringing up our bottom a little bit higher, and maybe that's why when we have one or two, injuries, no, don't laugh at that, Jared. It might affect us a little bit less. So going into that with the load management concept, Jared, you are a man that I believe watches NBA. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm sure you're well aware of the load management system that they got going on there. Is that just something that we're going to have to get used to as football fans, that in reality, starting 11 can't start? So it won't be something that, Arteta doesn't know his best starting 11. It's just absolutely necessary to rotate these players prior to making that World Cup appearances.
Absolutely. And I think this past season, a little bit of load management would have gone a long way for us. I think as bad as we played at the end of the year, if we don't have, potentially, you look at our back four and midfield pivot, we were missing 4 of those 6 guys for a significant amount of time. And it's hard not to think that if a couple of them aren't healthy, we may get a better result in a couple games here and there. And I think, like you alluded to, this year, even more so than any other, it's going to be important. I think it was something we needed to focus on regardless, given our injury history. But this year's basically turned all these guys into year-round players. I was a little bit opposed to the Nations League going on this summer. Not that I dislike the Nations League, but when you've already got all these games packed in, plus the World Cup mid-season, these guys aren't machines, and players do break down, and it's a real concern. And I think you're going to see the teams that have the depth perform a little bit better this season, and it's going to be noticeable. The teams that are thin in certain positions, it's going to be exploited because guys are going to be out with stress injuries and fatigue and all the rest of it. The nice thing, it sounds like, the team's aware of that. With all the links we have, we're kind of solidifying positions where we could use some depth, and we're assigning and going after players that play multiple positions, which assist in that too. So I think we're approaching it the right way, but it's definitely something that us and every other team should be taken into consideration this year, because basically in 2022, these players have zero break at all.
I think that's the case in any season, but then this season just ramps it up even more. I mean, we talk about Arsenal hopefully having 50, what is it, 38 plus Europa League would be 6 plus hopefully another 5 or another 6 to 10 games on top of that.
50, 55 range.
55, yeah. I mean, if you have a player that's in the World Cup and they get to, the elimination rounds, that's another 4, 5, 6 games in 2 weeks, or another, if they get all the way to the final, it's another 5, 6, 7 games in 4 weeks. These guys, I mean, they're not they're not superhuman. I mean, they're gonna have trouble, and I just, in any given normal season, you would need to have 2 players at every position. I do not understand how some teams get so lucky with their injury situation, and one of them is the one up the road. I mean, you just expect. See, it seems Kane does get hurt, but then he comes back the week before they play Arsenal every single time. But it just doesn't. They've never been made to pay for being thin with depth. We go thin with depth, and we're paying out the ass every single time. So yeah, I mean, look, it's hard to say that there aren't some lessons learned right now that are going on. Are we signing 80 to 100 million pound world class players on 400,000 a week with a 2 million pound per day bonus for the agents and the brother and the father and the mother and the sister and the aunt? We're probably not playing those games right now, but we're building a sustainable, not necessarily self-sustainable from a financial standpoint, but a sustainable competitive situation that hopefully has the ability to get out of things that aren't working a little easier than we have over the last few years. And the way you get out of those things is by going younger, by being by protecting and not making rash decisions like selling Torreira to Sampdoria for the £6 million that they want to pay for him instead of the $12 million that we agreed to. This is all a long-term building process that gets Arsenal back into the conversation of teams that you can't just push around in the transfer market and poke around and laugh at anymore. We were absolutely that and have been absolutely that for the last 5 or 6 years since a certain person left that got us in that position. But it takes a while to dig out of the quicksand. Yeah, I knew you wouldn't like that. It takes a while to dig out of the quicksand, but eventually you get out.
You'll love to see it, man. No, yeah, it's that whole situation is something. It's a conversation for another pod, Mikey. But I do believe that we're doing things slightly better. And one thing, Jared, that all these players that we're purchasing or at least heavily linked with is having common is that they're multi-purpose. And like we talk about the gentleman Martinez that's coming from Ajax, or we linked with Ajax. Like he's played center back, he's played left back, he's played holding midfielder. Vieira played in the midfield as 8, played as a false 9, played on the left and the right. These are multi-facet players. We got Gabriel Jesus potentially that's coming in again that plays on the right. He actually prefers apparently to play on the wing, also as a striker, et cetera, et cetera. Is this just one more layer of protection? And do you think that's an actual mindful thing that the manager might be doing just to potentially still keep a fairly skimped squad? I think he said he wanted to have like, it was 23 or 24. It was like, 22 outfield players, three goalkeepers. Is that something that you believe that the club might be doing on purpose at this point, Jared? Or is it just a happy coincidence that most of these players are willing and able to participate in multiple positions?
No, I think it's absolutely intentional, and I think it's smart. We just went into great detail about why we think the depth is important this year, and it gives you the ability to rotate and be flexible. And especially a guy like Martinez, Tierney's one who, even if he's healthy, we need to be giving some rest games. And if ever there was a case for load management, Kieran Tierney is it. He's had injuries his whole time here. You could say the same about Tomiyasu on the other side. But if Martinez can give Gabriel a break, he can give Tierney a break. And also, I would consider if he can play holding midfield, which he's done in the past, that gives us flexibility to play both, say, Martin Odegaard and Fabio Vieira together in midfield, 2 creative players with Partey behind. And then when we're forward in sort of like a 3-2-5 formation that we see a lot, it allows him to slide in next to Partey and still give us some stability to stop the counterattack and give us that extra creative player going forward, something you see kind of a lot with City and their extra attacking players in midfield. So I think it's done with real intent to both protect us in terms of depth, but also give us that flexibility in terms of tactics, depending on who we're playing, to put an extra attacker out there if we think it's warranted.
Yeah, quite frankly, one of the only players that I don't want to see rotated out of his own position is Saka, because we've tried him on the left, we tried him, as a right back, as a left back, and so on and so forth. But Saka, as regarding to like a player that I never want to see moved out of his position, I'm going to say Saka on the right side. Saka could play number 8.
Good timing with Daniel Roberts coming.
Yeah, Daniel Roberts once again, brilliant segue. He said
I heard that Saka could play goal as well. Like if we get into a shootout, they'll sub him in the 119th minute into penalties, I should say. We can't call it a shootout, but yeah, I mean the strange thing about the one move that probably didn't have that huge of a consequence, but I would argue we really could have used him last year, was Callum Chambers. I mean, you talk about a guy who's not past it. He is what he is. He's not, he's not a superstar, but he plays multiple positions. He plays positions we really needed cover for by the end of the season, and has the experience. He was a consummate professional. I mean, I always talked him up a lot more than other people did. But the usefulness of that guy last season and the fact that he could play multiple positions, and now we seem to be going in a strategy where we're buying a lot of hopefully more talented versions of Callum Chambers. To me, that was a weird one. We let him go in January last year, or was it over the summer?
It was in January, I believe.
Yeah,
if I'm remembering right.
I
And
think
it was this January, right?
correct.
Yeah, when we really could have needed him.
And we got nothing for him. We saved a couple £1 million in wages. That's it. And yeah, that was a strange one because I never really thought of him being like aching to get out of Arsenal either. So if yeah, we should have probably done more business in January. Yeah, probably hurt us that we didn't. And but of all the players that we let go in January, the one that I really rued letting go was Chambers, because I thought he really could have done a job in a pinch if need be. So, but yeah, I mean, do I think it's a strategy going forward to get guys who are versatile? Absolutely, and I think that's kind of the trend of the future. You don't want to have to play Granit Xhaka in left back just because he's done it before. Mm-hmm. You want to be able to play somebody that might be moving from center back over to left back, and you got your Ben White going from right center back to right back sometimes. That kind of cover every once in a while is fine, but I don't want changing the game completely by taking one of your key midfield players. And yes, I just called Granit Xhaka a key midfield player. And moving him into the back and leaving Sambi Lokonga all by himself against Brighton. That's not what we need.
And just like that, Mike got himself canceled from Arsenal Twitter sphere. Nice knowing you, Mikey. So Jared, I wrote down here in my notes, tongue in cheek, after seeing the arrivals of Vieira, Gabriel Jesus seems just imminent at this point. And, we also signed, of course, we signed Marquinhos, which is another random, slight Martinelli type signing. He might not be as popular in Brazil, but tongue in cheek, can we say, Jared, be excited for this weekend as this transfer window as it going? But in reality, what my question is, are we learning from past mistakes?
I mean, I think it's been evident over the last 18 months we're learning from past mistakes to some degree. Even if you don't think our team is much better than it was 3 years ago when we finished fifth, and we finished fifth this year, our wage bill's been cut probably close to in half. The average age of the team's probably gone down by 5 or 6 years. So it gives us a lot of flexibility going forward, both in that if Arteta stays, these players can grow with him and within his system. And if it doesn't go well and Arteta goes, you've got a lot more flexibility and assets that are movable to work with the new coach or to use to bring in players a new coach would want. So even though we finished fifth 3 years ago and fifth now, there's no question the team's in a considerably better place than we were at that time, all based on sort of the deals we've done, the players we've let go, and some of that we've had to eat the cost of in the short term for the benefit in the long term, which, at the time a lot of people didn't like. But now that we're kind of on the back end of that, we're reaping the benefits of those decisions and getting rid of those guys that are on 250,000 a week and getting to a much more manageable structure. So I'm pretty happy with the deals we've done leading up to this summer. And as far as the players we've been linked to, which is a much different thing than anybody we've actually signed, but as far as the players we're linked to, be it Jesus, Rafinha, Martinez, have we decided if we're calling him Martinez or Martinez yet? I don't know. Somebody can let me know.
I'm calling him Lissandro. I'm calling him the Butcher.
The Butcher, yeah, the Butcher. We'll go with that.
And I said last night on the Sunday roast that once we sign him, I mean we have to figure out which Arsenal player we can start calling the candlestick maker and the baker.
Yeah.
We got to have like the back line of like Ben White can be the candlestick maker, Gabriel can be the baker, and yeah. Oh, today we're starting the Butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker. Good. All right, I feel good about this.
That feels so good. And the Sunday roast, of course, on Brookcamp Wonderland, which you and Danny do every single Sunday. And it's, if you need a break, anybody that's out there, if you need a break from regular Arsenal, regular football podcast content, and you just want to hear two just lovely human beings that are the biggest fucking goofballs that you could ever know, I mean, Sunday roast is the podcast to listen to. And I say that I tune in every single Sunday, and it always gives me a really good laugh. But
it shocks me that people actually watch that shit. But
it's a nice icebreaker, dude.
We would do it like offline if it came to that. But the fact that people actually watch it is fun. But thank you for the plug, Mikey. I love
absolutely, dude. It's a great icebreaker, like I said, because I wake up and like 8 hours out of my day is either music or Arsenal podcast, because I don't really listen to other stuff outside of that. So come Sunday, when I'm chilling at home, just doing like gaming or just holding my baby, I just turn it on the side, right, and it's just no, Mike, don't laugh at that, and it's just brilliant, man. It's just honestly, it's a great icebreaker from getting away from football, which we all kind of need every once in a while because this whole industry, if you will, becomes very, very consuming. So.
Yeah, and Dublin Gooner is correct. It was recently awarded the Football Content Award for best colon and rectal content, and it's strange because that has continued weeks and weeks and months after my colonoscopy. After the colonoscopy episode, it just continues to be. It's just our phone call live, pretty much. That's what it is.
I absolutely love that. Okay, so we're going to take a few user questions, and thank you, Mike, for starring the ones that I've missed right there. We will jump into that, but prior to that, I had a crazy prediction that I was completely laughed off in the group that I had, and I had to double check with you guys. So I said at the beginning of the summer that I could see us spending 150 million again. Now I want to put this clear for the accountants out there: 150 mil committed to players. I'm not going to dabble into the net. I'm not taking into consideration, but if we sell Pepe, it's going to come down. Jared, do you believe...
You're saying transfer fee total?
Yes.
For all purchase players, regardless of sales, regardless of wages, any of that. You're just talking about transfer fee.
Because
you're talking about a number that doesn't matter, but it is something you can measure.
Well, yeah, it's a measure because a lot of people look at it as... that's the commitment level of the owners. Right. Is unfortunately that's just how it works. And I've never felt comfortable with people like Pepe. They committed 77 and they're like, yeah, but it's 77 divided by this many years, this many payments. Listen, if you buy a car for 20K and they ask you how much your car costs, you say it was 20K. You don't break down the payments and interest rates. So I'm just curious whether you believe that they'll go over or just under that 150 threshold that I kind of see them being able to hover just around, Jared.
Yeah, just doing the quick rough math in my head, it would be right about that number. If you had asked me, towards the back end of the season, if I thought it would be that high, I would have said no. After missing out on Champions League and kind of the players we're linked to, I think it could be right around that number. I think that's a good estimate. So if I had to say, I would say just gross outgoing, I'll take the slightly over.
I think it's going to be considerably over for gross outgoing.
I like this.
I think your net will be closer to 150 or 170, and
wow.
and there's a lot of I saw right before the podcast, and I'm seeing it here from Daniel Robert. I think the 215. Did Josh Kroenke really say on CBS that the budget? Did he give a number for what the budget was for our transfer window? I have trouble believing that, but I'm seeing that it's reported, and it's always reported as CBS that he spoke to. That he spoke to CBS about Arsenal during the Stanley Cup Finals. That's a big ask to think that would be true.
And it's just intensely stupid to put that number out there.
It goes against everything that Arsenal's done.
Yeah.
As far as, it serves you better to act like you're, the poor guy. And then, all right, fine. We'll do 46 for Gabby Jesus. Fine. You got us. So I unless someone shows me the video or an article written by a reputable journalist, aka friend of the podcast, then I have trouble believing that he said that. Now, I don't have trouble believing that that's a true number. I think that may be where we get close to, and it's just at this point, if that happens, and it hasn't happened yet. In fact, I think we've literally, as far as players announced, I think we spent £3 million because we haven't even announced Vieira yet.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But I think that's coming tomorrow. But that it is setting up to be a massive spending summer when we really just blew 80 million pounds of revenue, from the Champions League that we lost out on the end of the season. If at this point, if this happens this summer, and you still want to try to claim that Arteta's not supported, and that the club doesn't invest somehow in some fashion, whether, even if Kroenke's loaning the club money and planning on taking back the loan once we start showing significant profits, even if that's the case, It doesn't have to, that's investment in the club. And my concern when we dropped out of the Champions League was that very, very quickly the payables would start to match the receivables, and that we would gradually start going towards a mid-table team because we wouldn't want to take a big loss in any given year. And I don't know if the COVID reality helped to come into this or what it was, but it seems like we are going to spend until we get that damn Champions League money back on a regular basis. And, it's going to be harder and harder because Newcastle are on the rise. Chelsea may end up sticking around longer than a lot of people thought with the ownership change. And there's 6 or 7 teams now shooting for the top 4 positions, which could become 5. But still, it's not a guarantee. You're going to have to outwork these guys. 4th is not guaranteed anymore. But the team's investing. And I really, really hope that there's not just a lot of bluster about these players and no action to it. Because this would dispel a lot of rumors. Dispel the rumors that you can't get good players if you don't make the Champions League. Dispel the rumors that we don't spend money. And, at least the effort is there to get us back to where we belong.
Yeah, where we belong is a really interesting conversation because I find that where we belong is such a difficult thing to achieve with teams like Manchester City.
Well, that's because you're willing to accept mediocrity and your standards have dropped. That's the simple explanation.
Moving along.
Some of us have higher standards, and we are not willing to accept what's been going on.
You have to put pressure on the owners because I know Sam Kroenke,
I stand outside
watching the Avalanche. I know he's just thinking, "God damn, Arsenal Twitter is upset at me."
I stand outside my house every night screaming at Stan Kroenke. And so I'm doing my bit. What are you doing?
Having kids?
Yeah, you're porking your way through this downturn.
I like to distract myself from that. So, all right.
Yeah. You're trying to raise money by selling umbilical cords. Meanwhile, everyone else is just shouting on Twitter. So good on you, Mike. I apologize. I take everything back.
Yeah, you gotta. Sometimes you gotta take the odd way out. You know what I mean? Like everybody's on Twitter already. I mean, it's been done. I don't need that anymore. So, okay. So we got 7 questions. Some cheeky, some serious, some not so serious. But we're gonna dive in here. Mikey, are we still calling them user questions? We got user questions.
Of course, we're calling them user questions.
Okay, that's a certified TGP user questions. So here we go.
Until Tom Canton stole it from me, but and then he stole our 894 live viewers every podcast that he gets that we don't get anymore.
Yeah. If not for us. Yeah, Tom
exactly.
wouldn't. I like that.
I wouldn't have a career if it wasn't for
Jared. I'm gonna go ahead and start with. Actually, that question is not good for Mikey. Mikey doesn't like that question. I'm gonna start with you, Mikey, and then I'm gonna go back to Jared. Darren reads, Mike, any chance we gone cold on Tielemans because we are thinking about keeping Tierney?
Torreira.
Sorry,
Mike and I are having a battle here to.
No click, Mike. I got it. Don't worry.
The Tielemans thing. It's hard to know whether that's true or not because we've seen it mentioned. We've seen it, over kind of not overturned, but kind of pushed back on. I mean, it would surprise me if we're getting the Butcher, Tielemans. I just keep wanting to say the baker and the candlestick maker. We're getting the Butcher and Jesus and Rafinha now, and Vieira and the Brazilian winger. I mean, if we're doing all of this stuff, there's going to be a point at which it would just be shocking. I think Tielemans, if there's any cooling off right now, it's because we actually kind of hold, for once, a little bit of the cards in this situation where he doesn't want to return to Leicester. His head's been turned. And, if Leicester's not going to give us a good price, then we kind of cool our jets a little bit.
And it doesn't sound like any other team's shown any interest in him either. That works.
Which is strangely always the case with players, like the Thomas Partey thing. Like no one else was in for Thomas Partey, and I'm not claiming that that's because he wasn't a good player. I mean, look, when he's healthy, he's a game changer. So Why was no one else in for him at with a release fee? I don't know, but it always seems that when we get a player, like we're the only ones rumored to be in for him. But as long as the player's good, I don't care. So this is the one situation where I think that one might get done later in the summer than some of the other ones, but I don't think it's a done deal that it's not going to get done. And it's strange because Leicester supporters tend to not rate him that high, and it's weird because when I was up in Leicester twice this season, once for Arsenal away, where we weren't really surrounded by a lot of Leicester fans, but the second one was for their game against PSV, where we took a look at Cody Gakpo playing in the Europa Conference League as a neutral. And the one thing that struck me from that evening wasn't Gakpo. It was how much Leicester supporters really just didn't seem to mind if he was gone this summer. And so I'm hearing a lot of salivating going on from Arsenal supporters over him, and maybe playing in a different team with a renewed energy might be a great thing. And I have no doubt that he's a talented player, but like, he's not going to be one that if we don't end up getting, I'm going to be devastated over.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I answered the question at all, but
No, go for it. I personally, two things. I do rate Tielemans for a few years now. I think partially the Leicester City fans might be at that point where last season was such a horrible season and he was already a staple, like the go-to guy in midfield. So they might look at him like, you're the guy that we need to like help carry the team and you're not performing. But it is going into his last year of the contract, so it might not be something where he's as motivated, essentially, right, Mike? I mean, we've all been there in circumstances where we're supporting our team and we're just seeing a player and we're like, we're not 100% sure this player even wants to be here. Right. So
that does affect. Yeah, I mean that could be part of what the Leicester kind of fan attitude towards him is, and I think it was always in the context of James Maddison or Tielemans, and they seem to favor Maddison.
Right on.
Yeah, I popped this up on the screen before you go to the next question. Mike, BX Gunner said he'd go for Cucho Hernandez from Watford. I just popped this up because, oddly enough, he's been linked to the Columbus Crew of the MLS for a potential transfer right now, so he may not be on the market.
Cuchi Hernandez is what I call Mikey. That's what I call Mike's Cluckus.
Fuck's sake, Mikey. Jared, coming at you next, sir. Daniel Roberts, question. What player that we haven't been linked to could we sign, or do you want us to sign?
Ooh, that's a good one. We get linked to like 100 players a summer, so it's tough to find someone we haven't been. I'll say the guy who I've liked for the last couple of years, and he did have a big injury, I think, season before last. It kept him out for a while. Staying at Leicester City, I would love Wilfred Ndidi. I've long been a fan of his. He plays a position that we could really use, so that'd probably be the first name that comes to mind.
Right on. One player that I know, look, I know this is impossible because he'll probably never leave the Atletico Madrid setup, but they have a midfielder by the name of Llorente. God, that guy, what's the term here? He's a water carrier, if you will. Like, he's such a hard worker, man. He's multitask. It's just absolutely love him. So that would be like a surprise signing. I will say that I'm absolutely in love with the fact that, like, the Vieira thing just came out of nowhere, and the Martinez bid, like confirmed bid by Argentine, came out of nowhere. I want to see more of that, to be completely honest. I like that. As a matter of fact, I get annoyed when it's reported. I know it's media and they have to report, and they evolve around clicks, but like when it goes like everywhere and it catches fire that we're in for the butcher, if you will, Mike, and now everybody like knows and everybody's hyping it up and like, oh my God, if we don't get him, it's disappointed. I kind of like when there's just surprise, we sign somebody. That type of signing for me, just absolutely love it. And I always have a good time just shitting on ITKs because that's one of my favorite pastimes.
Me too. I hate him. I hate him so much.
Mike, Danny, your brother from another mother, asked a very, very witty question here. In 2020, 2021, Wolves had a Portuguese kit for their away kit. How many more Brazilians do we need before we have a Brazil kit as our away kit?
Well, how many do we have right now?
Gabby. That's no.
We have three. Gabby and Gabby.
Marquinhos.
Well, I think Marquinhos. Okay, I think he's. I mean, if you count Rafinha and Gabriel, that's 5. That's half a squad.
Saquinho, Nicetinho.
He'd be valued. And Coutinho would be valued, and people would give him $200K a week.
And Coutinho would be unbelievable. Well, I think 6 more Brazilians then. Have you seen the new kit release, or I don't know if this was real or not for Newcastle? Like, it looks like the Saudi international kit.
You're kidding.
I did see this, and that's true.
I saw like a brief, like it just kind of passed through my consciousness recently, and I didn't look too deep into it, but like, it wouldn't surprise me that Danny's just, he's being silly. I hope he's feeling better though.
I hope
Jaquinho. By the way, if Lisandro Martinez is the butcher, what the hell is Xhaka then?
Yeah, Daniel Robert wanted to know, what did he miss? Why is he being called as the butcher? Well, Daniel Robert might just nickname people. Okay, that's just his thing. He doesn't need a reason to do anything.
And that might break my streak. If there was ever a name I was going to get on the back of a shirt, maybe just the butcher.
Oh,
maybe
that'll be
the
one.
one.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. Butcher, and I just go around ordering steaks and at the pub and just cutting them and ripping them in my mouth.
I think I'm gonna have to go with Coochie.
I do that anyway, even if we didn't sign him, but that would make it more fun though.
I'll go with Coochie Hers on my next one, right, Mikey?
With an arrow pointing directly down.
Absolutely love that.
Instead of a number, just an arrow pointing to your ass.
Do I wear it backwards, Mike? Do I wear it backwards, or do I keep it? Either way, depending on the night. Jared, we got Dublin Gooner. Is Eddie and Jesus enough striker? I got that completely wrong. Sorry. Eddie and Jesus enough, or another striker required? So do you think the two are just fine? Do you think potentially Martinelli could cover if both of them in the shit hits the fan, or are you still holding out you're holding your breath that those Osman and Tammy Abraham links from early on in the transfer window are true?
Yeah, I love Osimhen. I'd love to get him, but I don't think that's realistic. I think this is what we're going to see going into the new year is Eddie and Jesus in the striker position. And like you mentioned, I think Martinelli will be sort of the default number 3 because Balogun's likely to get another loan. I will say, if we do loan out Balogun again, which I think does make sense so he can get some game time, that's one that I would be sure to have a recall clause in, only in the event that Eddie or Jesus gets a serious injury where they're going to be out a significant amount of time. That would leave us pretty thin up front. But I think we're going to go into the season with those two and the idea that Martinelli's kind of the third choice if he's needed.
I think this is what you're going to see. I don't think you're going to see Eddie, Jesus, and one of the other like target men like the Osimhen, Abraham ilk. Although I would absolutely just die to get Tammy Abraham on this team. I don't think you're going to see it. But what happened last season when Aubameyang became kind of exiled and we didn't have him playing up front anymore? What instantly happened? ESR, Odegaard, Saka start scoring goals. Finally finishing off goals instead of kind of, they're great, but there's no end product. Who are the number 9s for Manchester City? Aguero was hurt a lot, but
Erling Haaland.
Well, not now. I'm saying in the
I know.
like over the last few years, yeah. Who were the number 9s for Chelsea or for Liverpool over the last few years? It's weird that they've now gone in a different direction, but clearly the way that Arteta wants to play, despite having seen a lot of just crosses crossed into nobody in the last couple of seasons, the way he wants to play is similar to the way that Manchester City play, where they don't really have a huge target guy. They might have a smaller guy who's very quick and can score a lot, like Sergio Aguero in his prime. But, I think with Eddie and Jesus, it's enough as long as the way that we play and the way that we attack brings in these wide players and midfielders into the scoring opportunities. I couldn't care less who we get the goals from. I just want them. And I think those two could be enough if they stay healthy. If not, there's always January.
Yeah,
we can pick up Odson Edouard.
I love that. Or Daka. I absolutely love that. Yeah, no, I think, and a lot of people kind of confuse the ideology if like we need a 20 goal scorer, like striker. If a striker comes in and scores 20 goals, he's inevitably going to be taking goals away from other players in our squad, right? It doesn't exactly operate. If this person scored 15 goals last season, he's going to include 15 more goals for us. So I like the those type of strikers that get people involved, and we saw it a little bit with Laka. And obviously, we know Laka had his physical deficiencies, but that's the one thing he did. I'm going to say slightly better than Aubameyang, which Aubameyang was more of a inside the box type of striker that's lethal and would score. We didn't see it, unfortunately, the first 6 months of the season, but that was his whole thing. And Lacazette was always the type of striker to drop way deeper and get our wingers involved. And, Mikey, talking about you and what you were said about City and Liverpool, I mean, the majority of their goals come from the wings. And so there's no reason to believe that Martinelli, Saka, Smith Rowe, anybody that plays out on the wings might potentially score a little bit more with the inclusion of Gabriel and Nketiah. But
in Liverpool's case, a lot of them came from their fullbacks, and that's something I could see being a bigger part of our approach as well. Yeah. Good question, Dublin.
Like that, Mark Mertz, with a well-spirited, nice. I love this question. I really wish I could say the answer is yes, but Mark Mertz wanted to know: will the TGP and NAP crew, that's not another Arsenal podcast, which is a small podcast I run at 2-3 o'clock in the UK, Mike, I think it is, so nobody's awake to see it live. Will we be hosting our podcast for the Arsenal tour? And will tickets be on sale? Unfortunately, Mark, that can't happen because Arsenal forgot about me and they're not coming to the West Coast this time around. So I definitely won't be able to go to these live games. Mikey, are you planning on doing anything? Plastic.
As far as I know, of the combined members of the Gooner podcast, which is 5, and Not Another Arsenal podcast, which is an additional 3, there's only 2 of us that are going to Baltimore, and possibly only one of us that's going to Orlando, unless I'm overlooking something. In Baltimore, Sebi will be there, and I'll be there. And what we are looking into is, and there's a lot of planning and lack of information coming from the club, unfortunately, at this point, about what the days will be like. And it also depends on what my media obligations end up being, as I am more than likely going to be credentialed media for these games.
Love that.
But we're trying to set up something maybe the night before with some of our folks from England that are coming over. James from Gunner Blog is going to be over as well, covering the game. Kaya Kainak will be over, and my hope is to do some sort of show tying in Gooners versus Cancer, tying in some people that'll be fun to to meet and greet, and do an event in Baltimore the night before, and do as we did last year in Orlando. So stay tuned if you're going to be going to either one of the games. My hope is to have some sort of gathering. It's not going to be a Gooners podcast show, because who wants to just see me talk for a while? But my way of getting around that is to try to bring in some people that are actually worth coming to see to that situation. So yeah, I will not be going to any press conference that Xhaka is attending. Let's just put it that way. I've been banned. So yeah, there'll be something. And tickets, schmickets. There's no tickets. There's just buying, entering, and donating to the charity. That's your ticket.
Starting at $299.99 at the low price. Yes.
Speaking of tickets, by the way, we
right.
put a deadline on the Gooners versus Cancer 89 shirt. We're gonna give that away on the 1st of July. No matter how many tickets we've sold, we're close to the $10,000 mark. We are at the point where we're close to 400 entries for that shirt. We want to get to 500, but if we fall short of that, we're going to give it away on July 1st. So you have 10 days now to get to goonersvcancer.com. Check out the shirt. It's an incredible shirt. I'm not going to play the minute and a half video right now because we're already running long, but it's a shirt signed by John Lukic, Lee Dixon, Alan Smith, and Michael Thomas with the famous call from the final seconds of Anfield 89. It's something you can only get through Gooners versus Cancer. And it's been on auction for a long, long time. We're ending it in the next 10 days. So if you haven't already donated, this is the time to get in. Go to goonersvcancer.com. You can see it on the scroll at the bottom of the screen. And there's other fun events coming up too. If we want to talk about those, we'll talk about those at the end though. Let's get to another user question.
Many more here. User question. Jared, here's another cheeky one. I mean, because these are legend and these are Emirates legends without having ever played for Arsenal.
There should be a statue outside the Emirates of all the players that we were linked with 9 times or more. Benzema's in there.
Yeah, just a quick fire question. You know how to elaborate on this, but I had to include this because I thought it was funny. Would you take either Draxler, Aouar, or Mbilla for this transfer window?
No.
Nah, I'd take nobody.
Is no an acceptable answer?
I'll save the $10.
He should have included no for yeah.
I mean, Arsenal should get more credit for some of the moves they don't make. I mean, it's easier to not make a move than it is to make a move. But some of the players that we haven't signed have turned out to be absolute shit.
Yeah, people were upset we didn't give 50 for Aouar, and now they're begging someone to take him for like 20.
It's almost Arsenal-esque about how we could have sold someone, we could have sold Wilshere and then we gave him away for nothing. Yeah, I mean, Thomas Lemar for £92 million.
So I was going to say that came up a few days ago. That's the one where I'm like, holy shit. I assume it was real. I don't know.
I don't believe that.
But that it had been like X amount of years since we bid 92 mil for Thomas Lemar. And
that summer, there were actual serious rumors that we were going to be dropping 130 million pounds for Mbappe.
Yeah.
So Lemar was like Lemar. It was believable because we were set to do 130 for Mbappe, so 92 for Lemar, who's this up and coming superstar. Ugh. That would have killed us, man.
You're never on the right side. If you're paying 75 plus million, it virtually never works out in the Premier League. I mean, the top 10 highest transfers of all time, I think Van Dijk's in there, and he's the one that's probably worth it. I think the other 9 you would look at and say, no, I wouldn't take any of those guys. It's never worked out well.
Well, other than Mbappe,
Mbappe would have been the second exception.
Yeah, but I mean, the money was so crazy. I like that picture, the one that you had up from Daniel.
I just lost it, so I apologize. But it was penalty taker.
There's only one answer to that.
Okay, so penalty taker for next season. There's only one answer to that, and that is
Bukayo Saka.
It's Jesus if he signs.
Probably.
If he's not here, I agree with Saka.
I still like Lacazette.
We should just bring on Bittner for those.
Oh, I like that. Bittner and Kilsman. They're pretty good at that. So this one's directed at you, Mike, and I believe the answer is yes to this one. You're going to do a financial podcast. Is that correct, Mike?
Yeah, there'll be some financial podcasts. I've been I'm waiting for the boys from the Arsenal Lounge, specifically Mo, wants to debate me on Kroenke's expenditures. As the summer goes on, I'm guessing he's getting less and less willing to try to support the fact that Kroenke hasn't actually invested in the club. But either way, it's not so much a me against Mo situation, but it is, I happen to find the finances of football and Arsenal in specific fascinating. I know a lot of people don't, or at least don't want to hear about it when we're not excelling as on the pitch. And I get that, but yeah, we'll be doing some financial pods over the summer because there isn't always a whole lot else to talk about. So
awesome. And excelling on the pitch segues brilliantly into our final question of the day. And this is a really interesting question because I know we are fairly apart when it comes to this, but I'm going to start it off with you, Jared. Mike, I would like you to get your opinion on this as well. But Q from Daniel Roberts, once again, with all these signings, can we compete with Liverpool or City yet?
If we make all the signings, which I'm assuming we're saying Jesus, Rafinha, Martinez, if all of those guys came in, I think we should finish third. I still don't think we're to the level of those guys. And it also takes time when you have that many new players coming in to sort of get some continuity and have them playing well together. The one caveat I would say is if, horrendous injuries befall one team, that obviously changes things. But if everyone's relatively healthy, I think we should be above Spurs and above Chelsea next season, certainly above United. But those two, it's a pretty big gap to try and bridge. And I think it would be some really positive steps in doing it, but we wouldn't be there yet.
I'm going to say no for next season. The one, and yes, injuries and something completely befalling one team could be the other. We're assuming that Arsenal make all those moves and kind of that Liverpool and City are done after their huge striker signings. That's obviously not the case. They're going to be adding to their squad as well, especially if Jesus leaves and, as has been rumored, Sterling leaves to go to Chelsea. You're going to see some more movement from them. So they're just going to keep reloading. The one team that could be poised for a pretty precipitous drop maybe not this season, but over the next few seasons is Liverpool. Their cycle has been very reliant on a run of amazing decisions, amazing player pickups like Mo Salah and Sadio Mane and Mario Sane, and I mean just everybody other than Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain has been the right player at the right time at the right price. Same with their sales. They've been relatively healthy, and they've got one of the 2 or 3 best coaches in the world. And some of those things are going to come to an end in the next few seasons, and they're not going to just spend their way and issue, $500,000 worth or pounds worth of stock. They're not going to do what City and possibly Newcastle and Chelsea in the past have done. So they may be on the cyclical peak right now where they're going to start to head down a little bit. But you're not going to see a whole lot of that this season. My big prediction for this season, not that anyone asked, is Darwin Nunez is going to score less goals in the Premier League than Diogo Jota.
I like that.
That's my unpopular opinion prediction. And I'm going to try to find a way of betting on that, but I don't know that exact bet exists. But
if Luis Diaz didn't exist, I could see that if Jota was going to be playing more, but I feel like he's going to be the odd man out a little bit, and his minutes are going to be limited.
I keep forgetting about Luis Diaz. You're right.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Well, I've already said it now, so it's out there. So yeah, we're competing for third next season, but we're competing for second the following season. I hate to say this, but unless just you have the perfect season, a la Leicester in 2016, and believe me, the spending by the top teams has gotten even more so, making that an almost impossibility. As long as Manchester City is allowed to do what they're doing, as long as they're not sanctioned and punished in a more serious way than their sham of a settlement with FIFA or with UEFA back in 2014, as long as they're continued allowable to do this, we're all competing for second. Sorry.
And if there was ever a salary cap, KSE right to the top. All they do.
Well, and I think that's what we've been betting on for the last 20 years was that financial fair play would at least be a pseudo salary cap.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, but as long as the environment that exists right now exists, if Manchester City doesn't win the league every single year, it will surprise me. Mm-hmm. And it'll take a team performance like we saw from Liverpool a couple seasons ago to do it.
So what you're saying is you're accepting mediocrity?
Yeah. Whatever mediocrity is,
yeah,
I'm clearly accepting it.
Yeah, no. So something interesting that you brought up in regards to Liverpool and Manchester City is they are at the point where their depth is so good and their quality overall squad is so good that they could afford to spend 100 mil on one single player. We're not there yet. We are still very much on the phase of we have to buy 5 players every season in order to get our entire squad up to par. And as far as like we always mention Leicester City as that one team that had 0 injuries and everything went perfect. Honestly, I would actually like to add Liverpool to that list because the one season they won the league is when they had practically like 0 injuries. Everything went like perfect to them. No suspension, no injuries.
It was the following season that Van Dijk got hurt, right?
And then and you know and it's
you
funny
saw them take a dive.
And to that point, right? And I know that Arsenal fans are going to be Arsenal fans, or fans are going to be fans, and sometimes they're going to look at some even positives and say we only did it because. But let's be clear. Fuck it! It took their goalkeeper to score a header in the 90th minute for them to make Champions League. So they, injuries correct any team. So this whole idea that when sometimes Arsenal gets a little, I'm gonna use the term hard done, and like you brought up earlier, Spurs seem to have the rub of the green, Mike, and we don't. But injuries are a thing. To people that say, "Oh, that's an excuse," it's not. It's factual. It's part of the squad, and it has a heavy influence on everything. So, all right, that was my little rant of the day. So, gentlemen, we have gone hour and a half, so we're going to say our goodbyes. Jared, I'm going to start with you. Mikey, when it's time for you to say goodbye, make sure you plug your following 2 podcasts. I believe you already have your guests lined up, and they're 2 solid podcasts.
Our podcast.
Unfortunately, Mikey, I will not be here.
Well, yes, but it's still our podcast.
Our podcast. Yes. With the B-Tech. No, I'm not going to make that jump.
No, don't go there.
Okay, Mikey. Jared.
Unless you want me to expose what you learned when you were today years old.
Oh, no. I was yesterday years old.
Oh, that's true.
Jared, always a pleasure, sir. You want to tell the listeners, the users, where they could find you?
Yeah, great to see you guys as always. Hopefully I'll be back again on Wednesday with Mike. If you want to see anything from me, you can find it on my Twitter right down there below. It's at JCAFC.
Love it.
Beautiful. And Jared, I want to again give you special props for being my writing partner on the social media for Gooners versus Cancer.
Absolutely.
There's going to be a lot of information coming out real soon about what this summer is going to hold. And so if you see some great perfect social media posts on Instagram, you'll know that those came from Jared, and then my crappy ones on Twitter that get no traction because I'm not the gerbil apparently. So yeah, speaking of Gooners versus Cancer, so we've got the 89 shirts going to be drawn in 10 days on July 1st. The deadline to enter is June 30th, and I will just put a picture up of it. Not the video, but I think we have a picture somewhere of the signatures from the 4 legends and them writing the Brian Moore famous phrase. So it's a one of a kind shirt. You gotta look at that. We're also having the 3rd annual FIFA tournament for both Xbox and PS4 or PS5, whatever, PlayStation. And this has been a lot of fun, man. I mean, people of all ages get involved. People from all over the world get involved, and it's fun to watch. It's enjoyable. You meet new people. You get into these chat groups. And you don't have to be good. Just have fun playing. And there's a version for each one. Not subscribe, but follow Gooners v Cancer on Twitter, because that's where you'll find all of the information about how to join. But registration is open now, and the tournament starts on the 26th of July. And runs for a little over a week, ending the day before Arsenal kick off the season. We'll be doing stuff during the live tour this summer. If you're in Baltimore or Orlando, come see us. We will be doing our 24-hour podcast. We're going to get a leg up on the competition, and we're going to do a 24-hour podcast to raise money for Gooners versus Cancer. We did the first one last year. It was outstanding. We're doing another one, and I've already got a great lineup of people who are going to be joining us. Some who joined us last year, some who didn't, and will be great to watch. And then the last thing is, tentatively speaking, September 1st, London, England, United Kingdom, Europe, Earth. We are planning on having a live event for Gooners versus Cancer with some top talent there. Should be broadcast worldwide. Should be a fun evening if you're in London. So Thursday evening, September 1st. We don't have all the details yet, but if you're going to be around or can be around, we'd love to see you that night. The FA Cup of football phrases, Daniel, it's coming. It's in the works. We have a plan to make this the most special one yet, but it relies on some schedules matching up. So more news on that in a little bit. So a lot of fun stuff coming up, and daily shows as often as we can through the summer. So let's have some fun together. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Jared, for joining us. And I guess this is the part where we go to the intro as an outro. I hope that we have not been canceled, but it wouldn't surprise me. So in any case, see you tomorrow night when we have Andrew Allen from the Ars blog, and I think he's occasionally on the Ars cast. Met Andrew a few weeks ago. Great guy. Looking forward to talking to him tomorrow night. And then Wednesday we have Ars blog himself. Thursday and Friday we will be talking to someone who hasn't been announced yet. So that's it. Should I talk for another 10 minutes, or is that good?
I don't know. My name is Mike
I
Hers.
think we're
It's been a
good.
pleasure being a host today. I don't often get to do this on this podcast, so it's kind of fun. And Mike was surprisingly well behaved today. So Mike, I just want to say thank you for not driving me crazy. That's always a plus.
Well, I heard before the podcast, these two talking secretly about how I never let anyone talk for more than 3 seconds. So I tried to behave as much as I could. So anyway, without any further talking from either one of you, thank you for joining us. Come on, you Gooners.
Once upon a time, way back when there were only 9,000 Arsenal podcasts, 5 young men from various backgrounds, an Irish kid with a horrible haircut, a young Jewish nerd who hadn't discovered food yet, a child from Hemel Hempstead who didn't want to be English no more, a handsome advertising magnate with impeccable judgment, and a young Mexican AC Milan fan hatched a plan to take over the world of Arsenal podcasts. But then these boys became men. Jared, Mikey, Ewan, Magic, and Andy. And the rest, my friends, is history. And now, all these years later, you tune in every so often to hear their incredible takes, their football knowledge, and their sensual advice. But now, it's gone too far. You, our fans, are at long last witness to season
7.
Welcome to the Gooners Pod.